Hello, this is Jackie Mosney with the Smartphone Patent War and IEOR 190G at UC Berkeley. Today I'll be discussing Google, and I'm going to be continuing from what I was talking about just a few months ago. So now that it is the beginning of April, things have changed since Google has been able to acquire Motorola Mobility, and they did lose the Nortel patent to Apple, Microsoft, RIM, SONY, and a few other companies. Since then, antitrust arguments, as opposed to patent infringement claims, have been creeping into the spotlight in the last few months. Antitrust arguments are referring to competition law, known in the United States as antitrust law, and it's a law that promotes or maintains market competition by regulating anti-competitive conduct between companies. Since so many companies now have really strong patents, they can pretty much stop their competitors from growing, and this is to counteract that and not allow that to happen. On April 3rd, the EU announced that it was open to antitrust investigations of Motorola's, which were demanding licensing fees for standard-setting patents, and against both Microsoft and Apple. According to Microsoft, Motorola had been blatantly unreasonable and were demanding $4 billion a year in annual royalties to use 50 of Motorola's patents in Microsoft Windows. So Microsoft, obviously in rebuttal, was saying this is completely unreasonable. There is no way they'd be able to follow this year by year, and really thinks that Motorola is taking advantage of all the patents that they've created, and that's why they want to go through with this antitrust investigation. So the EU actually announced its approval of Google's acquisition of Motorola Mobility. It's also not a coincidence that Apple sued Motorola Mobility for asserting rights to certain industry standards patents in early April, the same day that it actually leaked that the US and the EU intended to grant antitrust clearance to Google for the acquisition of Motorola. And Apple actually thinks that Motorola is abusing the monopoly power of its patents to squish competition, which is interesting because a lot of companies now think that Apple is doing the exact same thing. And that message was specifically directed to Google. Florian Mueller reported on February 8th, Google has told regulators that it intends to continue Motorola Mobility's policy and demanding 2.25% of the sales price of smartphones that employ any of their patents, no matter how limited the use of that technology is. Meanwhile, Apple and Microsoft are still waiting for their antitrust approval of their $4.5 billion acquisition of the Nortel patents. And this patent acquisition by Apple and Microsoft would help Google actually get Motorola Mobility, since Google could argue that Android has to survive in the marketplace and needs Motorola's patents to do that. And they can leverage it this exact way. So it looks like that's actually going to work and has helped them gain the Motorola patents that they just were able to be approved earlier this month. On a separate note, Google's actually facing separate EU antitrust probes over other search engines such as Expedia and TripAdvisor, both travel sites, on Tuesday, April 3rd. Claiming that the U.S. company was rigging the entire online search market, which is a really good point. I mean, Google really does have the market right now for search engines, but are they rigging it, or are they just marketed and positioned very well? This information was brought to you today by Allison Frankel, and links to this will be provided at the bottom of the page. Thank you for tuning in.